Welcome to the Improviding Life podcast, where we explore how life can be more livable. This is Lori Love, and I'm bringing part 3 of our Adulting on Your Own Terms series. And today we are talking about vision. I have a little recipe, or if you're a math person, which I am not, a formula, that vision equals goals plus body cues plus community. I'll say that again because it feels fancy to have a recipe to share with you. Vision equals goals plus body cues plus community. When we are putting language to our vision, let's use the example of our vision being the experience we have with adulting, our ideal day, society, life, any of these categories, right, of perception, of awareness, of a desire that you have a vision for, right? Once we're putting language to that, it allows us to start to name, normalize, and navigate having a relationship with that vision. When something is only in our mind, or something that seems like it is a myth to us, like it cannot actually exist in real life, we're not having a relationship with it. We're in that situationship mode. And so starting to put that language can look like having goals. And this is coming from someone for most of my life in my PDA, which is pathological demand avoidance. Essentially, if something cues in my body and nervous system as a demand, it just shut down. I cannot process or function that way because it makes my nervous system feel like I am facing a saber-toothed tiger and there's no cave nearby, right? So goals used to be something I felt very phobic to because they felt very externally mandated. And yet now I'm resentimenting my relationship with goals in general and realizing that goals can look like the sort of boundaries, or visualize a lot of things as like bowling, a bowling alley with bumpers, right? Goals can also be a way we're looking at putting up those bumpers or setting our boundaries of what our relationship will look like with something. So if we are putting up our boundaries or clarifying where our bumpers are in terms of, let's say, our vision for what an ideal day in our adult life would look like, a goal might look like, I am going from feeling overwhelmed and screaming into my pillow 7 days a week down to 3 days a week. A goal can be that I would like to stop buying food that I, quote, think I should buy because it's healthy, and just actually buy shit I know I will eat, so there's less food waste and I'm not wasting as much money and then feeling bad when everything keeps getting wilty and sad in the back of the fridge because I won't eat it, right? So these goals can really be the ways in which you're willing to relate with something, the boundaries you need in place to be able to believe that that vision is possible, right? So in that example of an ideal day for adulting, right, and having fewer days of being at what I call overload mode, those boundaries there, might then have some sub-steps or other components. So if you realize that most of your days of screaming to the pillow are caused because you said yes to everything at work or in all of your relationships, even though your plate is beyond full, the sub-goals can break out, right? Or how will you achieve that larger goal of having fewer days where you are left depleted and overwhelmed? That can look like you have a clear list written out of all of your project deliverables at work with the due date. So then that way, when you're in your next meeting and advocating for yourself that this is more work than one person can do, you have the facts and the data right there. And you're leading with that instead of this mental pressure of feeling like you have to plead your case, and from this place of memorizing things and not being able to show people something that they can't refute, which is deadlines, dates, and deliverable type things, right? And so the thing, though, sort of looping back to why goals were so inaccessible for me was because, again, that idea of outward or external expectations, obligations, really this sense of being perceived and having to perform. What I've then realized, though, is that even with having external metrics that I self-define, right? Like if that sort of, 3 days or less of having a full sensory meltdown a week, that is also something that can be external, right? That's like can be seen, and there might be other things that are created externally from that goal. Those external metrics take time to materialize. And often when we aren't seeing the material development of our goals, we continue to doubt our vision, and also we don't stick with something for the duration of time it might take to actually bring into being. I do this. It's not just you, if that helps knowing it all. So because of that, because those external metrics take time, our body cues can be a more real-time metric for how we're doing, right? And so perhaps an external metric for less food waste and spending less money on your budget is, a less crowded fridge, less food going into the trash on trash day, more money in your savings account because you're spending less on food. Those are external things that, again, might take time, but a body cue can be trash night does not lead to a breakdown or negative self-talk when I'm seeing all this food go into the trash can, right? The body cue can be the sense of ease, or, there's less of an emotional spike when you're getting ready to take out the trash. A body cue could also be that you notice that your time in the store when you're grocery shopping is shorter because you're going directly where you need to go. You know what route you're getting, you have your list or what have you. And, maybe you're totally skipping the fruit aisle because fruit is just not your thing when it's, you're not going to eat it before it goes bad. Maybe instead you're going to the frozen section because, a bag of frozen blueberries does you better than 5 carts of fresh blueberries every month that are never going to be eaten, right? So again, identifying those body cues is the way that you are yes-anding your desire to have that relationship with your vision, go through the process of actualizing that, which is, setting those goals and then taking those actions, and having that real-time feedback of your body cues. Then also leads to this third part of community. There's that saying that we are the sum of, the 5 or 6 people that we spend the most of our time with. So if we're considering that to be a lowercase t for truth, right? Let's just consider if that's relevant, if that's accurate, then we don't change the world alone, right? That's also true. So often those of us who are collective care and community care minded feel this pressure or this desire to make an impact on the world and to change it. But the dysfunction within our own lives and within the world at large was not solely created by us. These are so often intergenerational issues. These are cycles of dysfunction within relationship issues. There are so many people and processes and habits and cycles that are going into that situation. And so asking instead this question of how do we each do our part can really help with this vision. So going back to our example of being at work and navigating that work meeting with that clear list of everything on your task list, the due dates and all of that. This idea of bringing in community to our vision can then look like saying, we have this entire marketing team. Task 1 and 2 is more aligned with this specific marketing role, and I actually function more as the middle person and slow down the process if I have to do this input on it, right? So in that example, you're offering out a potential way that community or sort of spreading out the situation spreading out your work in that situation makes more sense instead of, again, keeping that thought of, I have to do all this by myself. Using the example of like your food purchasing and food waste relationship spreading out to community might look like, instead of shopping for you and your 2 roommates, because that has been, let's say, the expectation since you've moved in, or that's what ended up happening because, let's say, your work schedule's more flexible, or you don't mind carrying the grocery bags, whatever that looks like. Perhaps part of that community component for your vision is having a sort of roommate meeting to reconvene and check base and say, does this still work for people? Like, I had been buying X, Y, and Z because it used to be on our list all the time, but I'm realizing it's not being eaten. I'm going to take it off the list, right? Or even saying, it's no longer supportive for me to be going and doing this activity alone. Buy your own groceries, right? Or let's do it together, or, whatever that conversation looks like, right? This is not me sharing out these hypotheticals. It's not about being prescriptive of there's a right way to do it. It's about opening up the conversation on how we might start to believe that shift is possible, how we can start to, again, adult on our own terms by playing with this formula, or this idea of vision equals goals plus body cues plus community. Also, when we're thinking about adulting on our own terms, that concept, that way of being, means that everyone has their own piece of the puzzle to do. So this is like one nudge deeper into the community aspect, right? The more that you are adulting on your own terms, the more that the people you're in relationship with also can adult on their terms more, right? The energy shift in modeling, leading as your full self, creates the space, the safety, the normalcy of other people doing that. Again, it's their choice whether they want to or not, but in that latter example of asking roommates to start buying their own groceries, right? That also then might give them the space to realize that they've been super dependent on you, not like your roommate, but like a parent. Or it might also end up becoming empowering, where they realize, I actually really like cooking now that I'm doing my own grocery shopping, because I'm using all of those recipes I save from Pinterest or those Facebook ads that I don't ever look at otherwise. Right? So as we're sort of summing up and wrapping up this episode, I invite you, and would really love to hear anything that comes up when you're creating and playing with this recipe or this formula for yourself. So perhaps one way to start is thinking about a certain aspect of your life, of adulting, of being your full ass self, and then going through this with you, or this framework with you. So what is the vision? So let's say, your adult life, what is a vision of an ideal day of, I would really love it to have more time outside, more time with friends and family, and less time doing administrative things like balancing my checkbook and like all of these things that you may want to digitize, right? These are just random examples, obviously. And so then you can go through this process of, okay, goals. What language am I going to put to this vision? How am I going to create space to start having an active relationship with this vision that is going to move out of like myth territory into reality mode? And then what body cues might you start to notice? And again, you'd be sort of guessing at, I might end up feeling this. And then after implementing or trying these goals, you would then start to notice, this is or isn't what cue makes sense for me. And then you can always refine this, right? This one formula does not mean you have to keep the exact same variables every single time. And then seeing how this community approach, or, what other pieces of the puzzle are there? What other people in my life have a piece of this puzzle? How can I acknowledge that perhaps the things that feel like life is less livable weren't just me creating that mess all by myself, right? There's this larger influence of so many different people, places, and things that have led you there. So respond, reply, share out, whatever verb you like of anything that comes up for you. And also remember, on the podcast page in Buzzsprout, there is that option to text me any question, comment, feedback, and then I can see it and anonymously reply out in the next episode too. So that's one way to also be engaging and getting, whether that's you want some feedback or just want heard, helped, or hyped up. I'm so happy to do any of those ways of holding space for you. And as always, have a razzle dazzle day. And if that's not accessible, you can put an F on front and have a frazzle dazzle day.